think we're good to go. Yeah, we're good.
We're good. All right.
I think. Let's see. We are good. We're live. We're rocking and rolling.
All right, here we go. This is Tim McMaster and Jets reporter Connor Hughes of The Athletic with some breaking news. The Jets have fired defensive coordinator Gregg Williams. The move comes the day after the team lost to the Raiders on a last-second touchdown in which Williams called an all-out blitz with 13 seconds left. Connor, Adam Gase, still the head coach. We are going live here for it. Finally, we made it live without Marissa. I'm not sure how we did it, but here we are.
Oh, it feels weird though, seeing the two boxes instead of the one. I'm not used to it. Marissa had her day off. Like that's yeah. Well, that's why we recorded the podcast so earlier in the day. Is Marissa needed her day off, so she was like, all right, I can give you guys 9 a.m. I'll do the Can't Wait podcast, and then I'll have the rest of my day off. And sure enough, we do the Can't Wait podcast. We sign off. I think I had a chance to go pour another cup of coffee, take the dog out, came back in here, and the Jets fired Gregg Williams, and it was like, uh-oh. And obviously, the crazy thing was you were like, all right, we have to do the emergency podcast for the breaking news team. We got to do all this. I was like, that's fine. I just automatically assumed that if we're doing a live podcast, that means we're gonna put it on YouTube and do the instant reaction there as well. And it wasn't until I tweeted out that it's coming that we realized that you and I have no idea how to do the live broadcast of the Can't Wait. We need Marissa. So it was the FaceTime chatting with her. She's in her car driving to who knows where. Trying to break us down and let us know how to go live. But we're finally here, man. We made it. We're fine. We're functioning, sort of. It's not the same without Marissa, but I guess we can make do for one of these episodes without her.
Certainly an embarrassing day for you and me and just all around. But Marissa saves the day via FaceTime and phone calls and also all sorts of stuff. But we're ready to go. The good thing about the delay, though, there was a positive to this, and that is that now Adam Gase has spoken about this. So that kind of just happened in the last hour or so. What did Gase have to say about how this went down? I guess the big thing is, was this his decision or was it Joe Douglas?
Well, he stressed it was his. This was his call, and it makes sense. I mean, the coaching staff is Gase's. You know, it's the way the Jets have had this organizational structure for a while. You know, it's Christopher Johnson is the boss of the general manager, and he is the boss of the head coach. The head coach has control over what happens on the field and his coaching staff, and the general manager has control over draft, free agency, and all that stuff. And then both of those parties report to Christopher Johnson, and this decision was Adam Gase's. Now, Adam Gase just didn't go Rambo and fire Gregg Williams himself, you know, pissed off that he ran the cover zero, cost him his first win, kept the possibility that Adam Gase was going to be an 0-16 head football coach alive. That's not the only reason why, you know, Gregg Williams got fired. It wasn't like Adam Gase just walked in and was like, I'm making this decision and that's it. He talked to Jaime, the team's president. He talked to Joe Douglas, the general manager. He talked to Christopher Johnson, the owner. And he said, this is kind of what I want to do. And every single one of those guys signed off on that decision. And obviously, Adam said it was my call. I'm the one who made the call. And look, if Adam Gase didn't want to fire Gregg Williams would still be this team's defensive coordinator. But Adam wanted to make the change. He got the okay from the 3 people above him, and the Jets made the move. And look, I mean, we've heard, and Adam played nice in the sandbox, I think, during his conference or his phone conference thing with us today. He didn't throw Gregg Williams under the bus, just said, you know, this was my decision. It's an organizational decision. It's what we feel is in the best interest of the organization. He stopped short of saying, you know, the players were turning on him. He said Marcus May's comments after the game had nothing to do with it. But look, I was told straight up by people within the Jets organization that, quote, no one takes Gregg Williams seriously. I've heard players say that after a while, his voice just runs deaf. You know what I mean? And that's kind of the thing with Gregg. And it's why Gregg Williams never lasts more than a couple of seasons at every place he goes. You know, he is that demonstrative. He is the aggressor. He is the screamer, the yeller. And when you are a Jets team that is coming off 4 years of Todd Bowles and Casey Rogers kind of being the calm, cool warrior friend, we're going to get through this. And then you're slapped in the face with Gregg Williams' coaching style, there's going to be the initial boost. There's going to be the initial shock factor, and you're going to get strong play like the Jets had last year. The issue is that when you have incessant screaming, incessant yelling, incessant criticism, just constantly having that same screaming voice in your ear every single day, eventually the shock factor wears off. and you're no longer surprised or shocked at what the coach is saying. You kind of just start to tune him out because it just becomes Gregg doing Gregg. And that's what was happening for the Jets. That's why you saw them go from such a strong defensive team in 2019 to dropping in virtually every statistical category this year. I mean, they're averaging like 30, allowing almost 30 points a game. They're like 31st, I think it was, in pass defense. I mean, the only thing they can really do is stop the run. But the reason they stop the run well is because teams never run on them because they can throw on them at ease. So it was clearly a long time coming. I think Gase, Johnson, Jaime, and Douglas were looking for a reason to move on from Gregg Williams. They hadn't really had it until this point, but when he made that play call that he did at the end of that game, when he single-handedly cost the Jets their first win of the season, when he pretty much solidified this team as one that is going to go 0-16, the Jets had their reason to let him go, and the Jets let him go.
It's honestly, when you think back to the play and then this immediate fire, it's almost like they're in the game, right? It's the fourth quarter, and Gregg Williams is like, hey, I'm going to call an all-out blitz. And Adam Gase is on the line and says, if you do that, you're fired. And he goes, I don't care. Yeah. And he just does it anyway. I mean, that's honestly what this feels like today. But obviously, that's not how it went down. Yesterday, they said that it was fully Gregg Williams' decision. I will say this. Now somebody new steps in Frank Bush. So do we expect for 4 games? It's only 4 games. But do we expect any changes defensively, philosophically, or is it going to be pretty much the same defense, the same playbook on defense that we've seen all year?
I don't think it'll be as exotic. You know, Gregg was kind of the one who pushed the envelope. He was the guy who felt like he was the brightest mind wherever he was. You know, that was his whole thing. His arrogance tended to get the best of him. And I think it did in a lot of situations because no other defensive coordinator is going to run the play that Gregg Williams did at the end of that game, but he's running it because he knows more and he knows what's going to work. And this is what he does. And that's just how it's going to work. I don't know if the Jets are going to be as aggressive with Frank Bush as they were with Gregg Williams. I don't think they're going to be as maybe exotic. They're probably going to be a little bit more safer, but it's not like you're going to see too much of a different defense. I mean, it's still going to be the same players. You know, it's not like with Gregg Williams gone, the Jets are suddenly now going to find a competent corner to start. You know, it's not like with Gregg Williams gone, they're going to find an elite level edge rusher. Maybe you see guys like Jabari Zuniga play a little bit more instead of Henry Anderson. Maybe you see Foley Fatukasi staying on the field a little longer. Maybe you see certain aspects of that where additional rookies are getting maybe 10 extra snaps. But for the most part, the Jets defense is what the Jets defense is. You know, they are going to still have Bryce Hall at one corner spot and Lamar Jackson at the other, and then Javelin Guidry and Arthur Mollett rotating in that slot position. You know, they are going to have Marcus May at free safety, and then strong safety is going to be a constant rotation now because it sounds like Ashton Davis, as Gase told us today on the conference call, is out the year. Bennett Jackson likely out the year with the hamstring injury. So it's going to be a figure it out there at the spot next to Marcus May. There's no real change there at inside linebacker. Like I said, maybe you just see Jabari Zuniga get a little bit more repetitions there with the starting defense. But there's only so much you can do, and there's only a month left in the season. There's only 4 games, and the Jets schedule is obviously going to be brutal. And it's not like Frank Bush is coaching to be this team's defensive coordinator next year. So I think you'll see maybe a little bit more passive defense, a little bit more take your foot off the gas defense, but for the most part, it's going to be the same team.
Maybe that helps out that young secondary a little bit. Ironically, the play that leads to Gregg Williams being fired is a play that's actually being celebrated by Jets fans in a lot of ways today because it kept them in line for that number 1 pick and Trevor Lawrence. That's just one more example, right, of this bizarro season for the Jets. Something went so terribly wrong that they fired the defensive coordinator mid-season, and that singular play has everybody in Jetsville thrilled.
Yeah, it really does. And I will say this, that I don't think that the Jets are like a better defense without Gregg Williams. Like Gregg would make some decisions every game where you were like, what the hell? The defense was always going to push the whistle with, I mean, the Jets lead the league in roughing the passer penalties. I mean, they have 11. The closest number 2 has 5. They're tied for the league in unnecessary roughness penalties with 7. So, I mean, the Jets were always going to be pushing the envelope with Gregg Williams. Maybe that's called back a little bit, but I mean, he was a very good defensive mind. He was, and he did have the ability to design some unique looks in fronts that would confuse quarterbacks and throw them for a loop a little bit. I mean, but you give and take with Gregg. So, you get that, but you're also giving away what you saw on that final play against the Raiders. So I don't necessarily know if the Jets are a better team without Gregg Williams. I actually think they might be a little bit worse because I don't think you're going to get such unique looks with Frank Bush. I think you're going to get things a little bit more vanilla. And when you're playing Seattle on the road, when you're playing the Rams on the road, when you're hosting a very good Cleveland Brown team, and then you're traveling to Foxborough to end the season, I actually think that letting Gregg Williams go improves the Jets' chances of going 0-16. Like, I honestly believe that, because there was always that possibility with Gregg on the sideline that you were going to get something defensively that you've never seen before. And I think it had gotten to the point where the Jets had to make a change. You know, that call was inexcusable. That call you can't get over. And when you have players like Marcus May, a incredibly well-respected defensive captain, calling Gregg Williams out like he did, you're at the point where basically there's no coming back. You know what I mean? Like, you got to make a change. It's just time to move on. But these final 4 games, I mean, this move wasn't necessarily one that put the Jets in a better position to win these final 4 games. I don't think that's the case at all. But it's also no different than the fact that this team's probably better off with Joe Flacco under center than Sam Darnold right now. So I think that if anything, letting Gregg go improves the Jets' chances of finishing this season winless.
It's a little bit of chatter in the chat. And actually, just thank you to the chat for the people that have come on, especially if you were here with us at 9 a.m. this morning before Gregg Williams was fired. And then you're back.
My fiance
now.
Doesn't even want to see me that much.
I don't currently see a Michael Dunn in the chat, but that's all right. He's forgiven. He actually called us out earlier this morning to see if we were going to jump back on, and we did make it here. But there's some questions. One that's popped up is, should we be concerned? Should Jets fans be concerned that Adam Gase has the power to fire his defensive coordinator? I would argue, no, it doesn't matter, right?
No, it's his staff. It's his, like, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Like, he's the head coach. Adam Gase is the head coach of this football team. He has the right to decide who is on his coaching staff. You get that right when you're the head coach. He's the head football coach. He's the head football coach of the New York Jets. He's going to be the head football coach of the Jets through week 17, and then the Jets are going to fire him. Like, that's how this works. So, like, if he doesn't want his defensive coordinator, he can fire his defensive coordinator. If he didn't want Dow Loggins tomorrow, he could fire Dow Loggins. If he wanted to move on from Brant Boyer, he can fire Brant Boyer. Like, that's it. That's it. And honestly, like, I'm kind of surprised that people are bugging out over Adam Gase making this decision and firing Gregg Williams. Who the hell cares? Gregg wasn't going to be the defensive coordinator in 2021. Adam Gase is not going to be the team's head coach in 2021. Like, this is going to be a complete staff overhaul. Maybe Brant Boyer comes back, because usually when you have a good special teams coach, he kind of can stick around for a few different regimes, unless, you know, you have a guy that's like, no, this is my special teams coach. And then obviously he'll keep him. But it's why Brant was with Gase and was a carryover from Todd Bowles. But no, man, that's just, I don't understand why people are that up in arms over it. I mean, at the end of the day, you can fault Gase for a lot of things. You can say he shouldn't have this say, he shouldn't have that say. Who's on his coaching staff? No, that's kind of what you get as a head coach. You get the ability to put your staff together. And he felt that it was time for the Jets to move on from Gregg Williams. He felt that call that he made was so inexcusable, and the way the players were reacted lamented that fact. And I think that it was just time. He said, all right, let's move on. Let's get through this. Let's be done with this. We're going to let Frank Bush, a guy that I know, a guy that was my assistant head coach in Miami, we're going to let him call the shots. He's going to finish this out, and we're going to try to get a win the final 4 weeks. It doesn't, who cares? And like I said, this wasn't we said in the beginning of this second show, Gase didn't go Rambo. This wasn't like he just showed up guns ablaze and was like, I'm firing people. Like, he went and he got it signed off on by Jaime. He got it signed off by Joe Douglas. He got it signed off by Christopher Johnson. Was it Gase's decision? Yes. Was it Gase's idea? Yes. But everyone else signed off on it too. And the Jets aren't losing anything in letting Gregg Williams go. This was a bad defense throughout this season. This was a dysfunctional defense throughout this season. This was a team that didn't respect Gregg Williams like they used to. Were there members of the defense that respected him? Absolutely. Foley Fatukasi, Quinnen Williams, so many of the defensive linemen respected him. The linebackers, the secondary, no. There was a legitimate disconnect between Gregg Williams and them. That's why your defensive captain, your well-respected defensive captain, felt it was okay to come out into the media and trash Gregg Williams. Like, just absolutely eviscerate Gregg Williams. That's what that was when Marcus May took the field. When things like that happen, it's time for a change. It's time for a change. It's time to move on.
One more thing I wanted to bring up about this, and it's the fact that, and I think you pointed this out on Twitter, Connor, that Adam Gase did not hire Gregg Williams. And Gregg Williams was hired before Adam Gase. And that just brings up another example, right? Of like how, and this is before Joe Douglas came on as well, but like how weirdly run this franchise has been at times, that you would hire the defensive coordinator. And then I assume when they hired Adam Gase, they just said, "Hey, you okay with this?" And he was like, "Yeah," but he didn't get hired and get to do a search of sorts and find his guy. Gregg Williams was there waiting for him.
Yeah, I'm sure that if like Gregg and Adam loathed each other when this thing began, like it wouldn't have worked. But yeah, I remember talking to Gregg at the combine, and he goes like, "Hey," he goes, "You know, it's crazy." He goes, "I was hired before Adam was." I was like, "Really?" And he goes, "Yeah."
He's proud of that too, right?
Yeah, he was very proud of that. Like he was very proud of the fact he was hired before Adam Gase. And I was like, "You were?" And he goes, "Yes, I was." And he told me something about, "You can't say that or I won't talk to you, blah, blah, blah." And I was like, well, that doesn't matter anymore. So I guess I could say it. But he was hired first. And I think it was just like the Jets knew the direction they were going in. They knew they were going to hire young offensive minded. So, you know, Cliff Kingsbury, they were going to hire. They were going to hire Adam Gase. And when I think Rule kind of was going to go back to college and things started progressing, they're like, all right, well, we know we're going to get our offensive minded. We want a defensive head coach or a defensive guy to run the defense. And Adam made that clear. Like when we talked to Adam at his introductory press conference, he said, I want to focus on Sam Darnold. I want to focus on the offense. I need a defensive coordinator that can run the defense for me. And this wasn't like an asinine concept. Like this wasn't an ridiculous move. This wasn't like, you can fault the Jets for a lot of stuff. This really wasn't. I mean, the Rams went to a Super Bowl with the exact same philosophy. Sean McVay had absolutely nothing to do with Wade Phillips's defense. Wade Phillips was the defensive head coach, and Sean McVay was the offensive guy, wanted to work with Jared Goff, didn't have too much experience as a head coach, didn't have any experience as a head coach. So he needed somebody who had been there before, done it before, that he could bounce ideas off, and he brought in Wade Phillips. The Jets were trying to create that same system here in Florham Park. They were going to have Gregg Williams, the guy who had head coaching experience, the guy who had been a very good defensive coordinator, the guy who could run his own show on the defensive side of the ball. And then Adam Gase could focus on the offense and all those other things. And it didn't work. It didn't. And, you know, we're a year plus into this thing. Gregg Williams is now gone before Adam Gase is, but Adam Gase is going to be gone in 4 weeks. And the Jets will go into this offseason and they'll do a complete research and they'll do a complete refounding. And I'm sure I can tell you firsthand, Christopher Johnson's learned from this. Christopher Johnson realizes the mistakes he made. This is the first time he's been in this situation. There were going to be hiccups. He made a big one by hiring Adam Gase. There was an issue, obviously, by pairing him with Gregg Williams. That didn't work, but he's going to be better for it. He's learned from the mistakes. He's not going to make the same ones again. And Joe Douglas is also going to be the one running point on this coaching search. And I think the biggest thing with the Jets and the biggest thing going into this year is, I know people are like, somehow people are connecting the fact that Adam Gase fired Gregg Williams as Gregg Williams is the scapegoat and Adam Gase is going to save his job. No, there is no chance. Adam Gase is gone after this year. He is not coming back. The Jets are going to have a new coach in 2021. The Jets are just letting Adam Gase finish this year because nothing is going to change by having him finish it. It's like, who cares? Just let him finish out the year. The one thing that they're going to have to do is they're going to have to come out here and they're going to have to find a head coach. No more offensive minded, no more sexy name, no more big mouth, no more college phenom. Go through your interview process and find a head coach. Find a Joe Judge. Guy was a special teams coordinator for the Patriots. To look what the Giants are doing. Go find your Joe Judge, just somebody who's going to be a head coach of a football team.
The Jets are 0-12. Gregg Williams is no longer the defensive coordinator, and Connor Hughes and Tim McMaster have successfully pulled off a live stream without Marissa. Miracles.
About it. Yeah, it really is. I think this is a more miracle than what Derek Carr did yesterday. This is the bigger surprise.
All right. Thanks for joining our breaking news coverage. Go to the Athletics new headlines section for much more on this story. To get access to all of the Athletics great sports content, visit theathletic.com/headlinepod, where you can get our big holiday deal right now, which is basically 2 for 1. Buy one for someone else and get a subscription for yourself free. Go to theathletic.com/theheadlinepod. Thanks for joining us.